Good morning. Hey, this is Bernard with Insurance Advisors Direct, one of the brokerage sales managers here, actually the life and annuity manager. And what we're doing is a recap of our sales summit that we had at the end of March. A lot of great success. A lot of folks are interested more in long-term care planning. So we called Mike Simenstad here. It's like, Mike can just do a little recap for us. So Mike with National Guardian Life, he's going to do a recap of his presentation he did at the sales summit. Mike, my friend here, go take it away.
Thank you so much, Bernard. How's everyone doing today? I hope you guys are doing well. What I wanted to do today for the next 30 or 35 minutes is basically do a little more like a next step after the presentation I did at your sales summit. And I know at the sales summit, I spoke a little bit about best practices on on having the discussion, the long-term care discussion, and how to position long-term care planning for younger people, right? That long-term care is more of an event rather than a stage in life in which you move to a nursing home. It is more of an event that can happen to anyone. But what I wanted to do today is share, and I'm a big fan of best practices. Seeing what other advisors do and agents, what other agents do, uh, and the process they use to be successful, and in my case, with long-term care planning. So while I'm not going to sit here and push a product to you, because I'm a big believer in that, pushing a product to people is not exactly the most effective way. When it comes to long-term care planning, I believe it's important to have a, a repeatable process in place on how to have the long-term care discussion, right? To get people to understand that long-term care planning is important, and to understand that it makes a lot of sense to plan for it and ultimately purchase a product. So with that said, I'm going to talk to you about what I call the long-term care planning process, right? It is essentially, I'm going to call it a three-step or a three buy-in process, and you'll see what I talk about when I go over this. So, what I'm going to do is, and I assume everyone can see my slides. And the goal of this process is number one, to ask the right questions to people. And I'm going to show you the questions, what I call the power questions that you can ask your clients. Because basically what you're doing here is establishing a discussion with your client based on reasonable beliefs. And as I said, there are three, I will call buy-in points that you need to obtain from the client, right? And we're going to go over those. So I call it either a three buy-in or a three-step process to having an effective conversation about long-term care planning. And of course, another goal of this is to answer objections without getting into a debate. The last thing you want to do is start, debating people about the odds of needing care. And I believe at the sales summit, I did talk about the odds of needing care. Right? It's once you turn age 65, it's about a 70% chance it's going to happen. But you know what? Sometimes when you talk about statistics and odds, that creates a debate. I mean, again, it's whatever you feel is most comfortable for you. But I'm a big fan of, you know, cleverly answering objections while avoiding a debate, because no one wants to have a debate with a client. And then, of course, all of this sets the stage to establish a plan of care and financing, meaning a long-term care insurance policy, whether it be traditional or a hybrid of some sort. So that's what we're going to do here today. First, we're going to go over the important questions. Like I said, that this is when you sit down and have a discussion with someone, there are important fact-finding questions you need to ask, because what these are going to do, these are going to basically, you'll be able to see what your clients what their hot spots are, right? What their main motivation for even having this discussion, and what their main motivations are. So, question number one, and you have to ask this: have you had any prior experience with someone who needed long-term care, whether that was in their family or someone they know? Most people have had some sort of experience, may have even been a caregiver with a loved one or a relative. So, share stories, share what their experience was, ask them what it was, ask them questions, be a good listener. And if you yourself have had a long-term care experience, share that as well. With this, kind of where their head is at, and what their experience is with long-term care. Number one, or the second important question: is it important for you to maintain your independence without being a burden on your family? Right? That's the big thing, right? Most people that buy long-term care insurance, and studies show this, that the main reason they bought it, wasn't, I want to protect my assets and income. I mean, that's important to a lot of people, but most people say, I buy long-term care insurance because I don't want to be a burden on my family. I don't want my kids and my wife or spouse to be burdened and have to become my caregiver. That's the number one. So ask that, right? See if that's their main motivator for long-term care planning. Another good question is: are you concerned that a chronic condition, if you develop a chronic condition that hinders you in any way, will that threaten your commitment to help provide for your spouse? Other fact-finding questions that are important, and this is very important: is it important for you to control the quality of care that you receive? And here's the big one: where it is delivered, right? Most people, in fact, a major turnoff for people even having this discussion is when they think of the term long-term care, they think of one thing: nursing homes. And that's incorrect. Those are two separate subjects. A nursing home is just a venue in which you could receive long-term care services, right? So where you're going with this is, most people are going to say, and when you say where it's delivered, where would you want your care to be delivered? What do you think most people are going to say? I want my care in the home. Over my dead body, am I going into a facility? Okay, great. Repeat that, right? This is one of their hot buttons, right? This is one of their main issues for having this discussion. Write it down. All right, great. Staying at home is important to you. Got it. Not being a burden is important to you. Perfect. Write those down, because you're going to go back to those when we talk about objections. Is it important for you to preserve your assets and your income? Right, your principal and your income. Right, is that important? Have you? And we'll cover this in a little more detail in a little bit. And another very good question: will you have a continuing financial obligation to any of your children, your grandchildren? Today, it is very common for people especially people in their 60s, they may have a child who has special needs and may need continued care, and that continued care or continued special funding into their adult years. It's also not uncommon at all for people, let's say in their 60s, who have made a commitment to pay for their grandchildren's education or something like that, right? Well, what is a major threat to these commitments? It's having to pay unexpected out-of-pocket expenses for a long-term care event. So again, another important question to ask and write down, because you're going to go back to that. So these fact-finding questions are important, because after asking these, repeat their motives that they have for considering long-term care. These are their hot buttons. In fact, you may even want to say, all right, so it sounds like, uh, you know, avoiding a facility, avoiding a nursing home, and not being a burden on your spouse and kids. Uh, those are the number one and number two hot buttons for you. Repeat that, because they will absolutely say, "Yep, you're absolutely right." And you can say, "All right, good," because you're going to develop a plan around their hot buttons. All right. Here are some other very good questions that help establish the need for long-term care planning. Right? If you live a long life and you need care, what's your plan? Right? Very basic question. Most people will look at you and say, I don't know. I don't have a plan. Uh, Another important one, we'll go back to it. What assets have you allocated for your future long-term care needs? Is it important for you to preserve your principal? Is it important for you to preserve your income? Right? Again, very basic questions to help establish the need. Where do you want your care to be delivered if you need care? And again, 99% of the people are going to say, I want my care at home. Right, over my dead body, do I want to go into a facility? Or you might have some people, especially those who are single, who say, you know what, I want to go into the really nice place that my neighbor went to, the Palace, of assisted living facilities, the next town over for me. That's where I'd like to go. Okay, write that down. Um, because long-term care, when you have that third-party checkbook, it allows you to to obtain the funds to go into those nicer, higher end facilities. What impact do you think a long-term care event would have on your family? Have you ever thought about that? Um, and then, of course, have you discussed long-term care planning with with your family, with your kids, with your spouse? And if you have, what's the plan? Most people have not discussed that, because it's amazing how it's not exactly the most uplifting subject, so people tend to avoid it. But unfortunately, it's something that needs to be discussed, something that needs to be planned for. So see if they have had that discussion at all. All these questions culminate in obtaining step number one, or I call it buy-in number one. And again, like I said, what we're doing here is establishing a discussion with the client based on reasonable beliefs. And most reasonable people are going to understand that long-term care is important because of longevity. And here's some language you can use. Long-term care is a problem today because people are living longer. We cannot deny that, right? When you agree, even if you take steps to take care of yourself, you're likely to live a long life due to the miracles of modern medicine. And you know what? Even if you don't take care of yourself, again, medication, new medicine, or new procedures are likely to turn what can be fatal conditions into chronic conditions. And that just may extend your life. And when you live a long life, you could need care. This could happen to you, right? Most reasonable people will agree that yes, this could happen to me. I like to call this obviously 101, because what we're doing here is kind of getting over the denial that people have, because a lot of people just cannot visualize themselves needing assistance with their everyday activities. But guess what? It could happen to you. And it's very simple. What happens when you don't die? Well, you live. What happens when you live? Well, you grow old. And what happens when you grow old? Well, you develop chronic conditions, and the likelihood of needing care becomes very strong. Very simple. This could happen to you. So you get buy-in that this could very likely happen, right? And most reasonable people will say, yes, that is true. The miracles of modern medicine are keeping people alive longer, yet the longer you live, the more likely it is you're going to need care. very simple fact, but obtain buy-in for that. Now we're setting the stage for buy-in item number 2. All right. And with that, uh, here's the key question, right? So a lot of people, especially when you're having this discussion with a husband and a wife, you'll find it's the husband is immediately thinking, again, this is maybe kind of a generalization, but this has been my experience with most couples, that the husband is usually thinking about himself and about nursing homes. All right. Get them out of that mindset that this is about you and where you're going to receive care, right? The question is not who is going to take care of you, right? When you're looking at a husband and wife, you know, we know who's going to take care of one. It's going to be the other person's spouse. We know that. That's not the question, but rather the question is, what will your spouse or family member, what will providing that care do to them, to your family, and of course your retirement portfolio if you decide you're going to pay for care services, right? That's what the key question is, thinking about the consequences and what that's going to do to the ones you love. And in that regard, long-term care sales is very similar to life insurance sales, right? People don't buy life insurance, for themselves. People buy it for their family. People buy it because they love their family. Same deal with long-term care, right? And it comes down to this. Long-term care has always been about the caregivers. And who are the caregivers in society? Family members. That's just the way it is, right? And I will tell you this, and I'm sure there are many people listening right now who can understand this. Being a caregiver is stressful. It's emotionally stressful. It can be physically stressful. And if you decide you're going to pay for care services, it can be financially stressful. It's all about consequences to families, right? Believe it or not, the stress of being a caregiver hikes older adult mortality rates. How many times have you spoken to someone you know, especially when it's a situation where one spouse is taking care of the other, um, and the spouse who was sick passes away, and they say, boy, you know what, it is kind of a blessing, because I don't know how much longer I was going to last being a full-time caregiver. I mean, those are the facts. The facts are caregivers suffer from stress-related illnesses, and that is just an absolute fact. um, Additionally, and I know it sounds very easy for families to say, oh, well, hey, if mom or dad, if they need care, they get to the point they need care, well, you know what, we're a loving family, we're going to come together like the Waltons. Remember in the 1970s, you had the Waltons on TV, a loving family. You know what, we're going to come together like them, and we're going to all take care. We're going to pitch in, and we're going to equally take care of mom and dad. Don't worry about it. Well, it sounds great, but the fact is, and I'm sure many of you can think of either your own experience or other families' experiences, a long-term care situation tends to tear families apart rather than bring them together. That's just the way it usually works out. Why? Because the responsibilities of providing care is never, ever, ever shared equally. That's the way it goes. Who's the lucky one when you have siblings involved, right? Let's say you have 3 kids, right? Mom needs care, right? Who's the lucky one who gets to provide all the care, right? It's usually the daughter who lives the closest. That's just the way it is, right? Who's the one who has the biggest opinions about everything? Is very opinionated about everything. It's usually the son who lives farthest away, right? Well, hey, I live on the other side of the country, but I think you should be doing this. All right. That's just the way it goes. Nothing causes family feuds more than a long-term care situation, right? So what you need to do is really engage the client. And again, this is, getting buy-in that, listen, having a plan in place is important because it'll keep your family together. This is a family issue, right? So when you live a long life and you need care, your family will do everything in their power to keep you out of the facility, right? Your family's awesome, your wife, your kids are great, and they're going to do everything they can do, right? But if your spouse needs long-term care, what is that going to do, to you, right? If you need care, your wife will take care of you, but there's a cost to that. Keep in mind that she will be under a tremendous amount of stress being a caregiver. What will that stress do to her, and how will that stress, affect her health, right? I mean, it's tough enough for most, mothers to, young mothers in their 20s and 30s to provide assistance to their, young, toddlers and kids, right? The bathing, the dressing, and all that stuff, even when you're in your 20s and 30s, it's very tough. Think about when you're in your 70s or 80s, trying to do the same sort of thing for a full-grown adult because you're trying to keep them out of a facility, right? That is extremely stressful. So again, step 2 is getting the client to realize that this isn't about them, right? It's about their family, doing the right thing for their family. And even especially when it comes to children as well. You could say your children, again, will do everything in their power to keep you out of having to go into a facility. But how will that affect their lives, right? Yes, I know they say they will, drop everything, their jobs, their own family responsibilities to take care of you. But what will the effect of being a caregiver have on their own health and their own relationships with their families? Most people, right? Most people, raise their kids to have them go out and take care of themselves. It's a very, again, the number one cited reason by long-term care policy holders that they bought a policy is so their families, especially their kids, do not have to be their caregivers. So the client will gradually begin to realize, all right, this is a family issue. This is not about me, going into a nursing home. This is about easing the burden on my family. All right. Uh, because long-term care insurance is not sold to individuals, it is really sold to families, whether the family knows mom or dad bought a policy or not. And it is ever since long-term care has existed, it's amazing. Every year, the months of November, December, and January are always the highest months for long-term care sales. Why is that? Because families are getting together for Thanksgiving and the holidays, and many people, travel to see their families, and they, see, that, oh boy, everyone, is getting a little older than the last time I was home here for Thanksgiving, and it's amazing how, after a while, when you go back and see your mom and dad, what's the number one thing you talk about when you walk into the door to your parents' home? Well, all their ailments. I hate to say it, but that's just the way it is. So long-term care insurance really is sold to families. Now let's get to the final step, which is step 3, right? And that's getting the client to buy in and understand that their retirement portfolio is currently the only thing that will pay for their care. All right. So again, that could be this is probably the easiest step because it really requires just one question to get buy-in on this, which is, what have you allocated from your retirement portfolio to pay for your future long-term care needs? Most people will say, well, nothing. I have not allocated anything from my retirement to pay for long-term care. That's there for retirement. All right. Well, then the answer is, then it's all allocated for long-term care. Because in this great country of ours, there's really no national long-term care program, right? The only one there is called Medicaid. And the copay for that is everything. It's 100%. So the copay is your retirement portfolio. So when you have not allocated anything from your retirement portfolio, it's all at risk. And that's just education. So and that's easy to obtain buy-in on that, right? I have had some people who say, "Oh, if I need care," especially a husband and wife, when they're together. And again, it's remarkable how many couples, families have just not had this discussion. But I remember talking to a husband and wife, and when we asked that power question, "What have you allocated?" The husband says, "Well, you know what? If I need, meaning really there, if I need to go into a nursing home," again, he's still thinking about, himself in nursing home care. "Well, we have a long time vacation home." At the time I was in California, and this was a couple in Sacramento. And they said, "We have a long time vacation home in Lake Tahoe. And you know what? If I need to go into a nursing home, I'll just sell that to pay for care." And I remember the wife going berserk, selling, "What? You never told me. We're not selling that home. I don't care what happens to you. You're not selling. Our kids have grown up there. Our grandchildren go there every summer. We're not, no way. I don't care what, we're not selling that. Absolutely not." So, it's amazing how when you speak to a couple and you go over this and, obtain buy-in, you'll see that some of them have their own thoughts about this subject. They just haven't communicated it or shared or had a discussion about it. So, um, this can be an emotional sale and an emotional discussion, but it's absolutely a needed one. So again, the power question here: what have you allocated from a retirement portfolio to pay for your care? And that sets the stage to educate them on what Medicaid is and what the copay for Medicaid is. All right. The bottom line is long-term care insurance allows your retirement plan to be what it's supposed to be for, which is retirement, right? Because most people haven't, worked their whole life to build up their nest egg and invest to create a retirement portfolio, only to have it earmarked to go for their future long-term care needs, right? In fact, what you can do is have your retirement portfolio pay for your long-term care needs by taking a portion of the interest it creates in creating the third-party checkbook in long-term care insurance. And again, the power question there is: how would you like to pay for your future long-term care needs? Would you rather use your principal or your interest? Most people are going to say, "Well, interest," right? All right. Well, this is the way you can do it by leveraging a portion of that interest with long-term care insurance. All right, here comes the cool stuff. All right. Here are the main objections you will receive that people have, that actually, since we already asked these power questions, we wrote them all down, we know what their hot buttons are. Now, the main objections can be used for a commitment rather than an objection. And here we go, right? "Well, hey, my family experience, all my relatives die in their 60s. In fact, my father died at age 60 on the golf course. And the same thing is going to happen to me. So I don't need to plan for this because I'm just going to drop dead." All right. Well, rather than get into a debate, agree with them. You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. You just may drop dead on the golf course like your dad, and you may not live a long life. But if you do, right, the consequences to your family and your retirement portfolio could be so catastrophic that we should at least discuss this subject. Right? It's all about talking about consequences rather than looking into a crystal ball and making a prediction. It's all about consequences if one needs a long life. Remember, what if you keep living? You find yourself keep living, the odds go up. So rather than talking about, what I think just might happen, talk about consequences, but do it in a way where you agree with them rather than getting into a debate and just talking about, "Yeah, but if you do live, I'm sure you agree that it would make sense to at least have some sort of plan in place in case you don't die. All right. This isn't the easy one, a very easy one. Let's say, well, you know what? I am never going into a nursing home, so I don't need any sort of insurance here. You know what? You're absolutely right. Your family is going to keep you at home, and you probably won't go into a nursing home. But that's a separate subject. Don't confuse that with growing old and needing care, because most people put together a long-term care plan and buy long-term care insurance. They do the stay-at-home plan, right? The reason they have a plan in place is to stay at home, have that third-party checkbook with built-in care coordination benefits. So if they do need long-term care, they don't have to go into a nursing home, that they have the resources and the money to stay at home without being a burden on the ones they love. So that is, I love it when they say, I'm never going to a nursing home, because that will just strengthen, their will to put a plan in place. Because having a long-term care policy in place can keep someone from having to go into a facility. Sometimes you get a family member, like I said before, who says, you know what, Mom, you don't need to, buy any long-term care insurance. Don't worry, I am going to take care of you. It doesn't matter that I live 12 hours away and I have 3 kids and a job and I'm a little league coach and I do everything. Don't worry about it. I am going to take care of you. Okay, so you don't need to plan. Well, the last thing you want to do is get into a debate and explain to the client that, no, how is your son going to take care of you? They look, hey, you don't want to get into a debate, because that doesn't do anything good for anyone. So you're not selling them, or you're not talking about long-term care to replace any care that family members might provide. Rather, you're selling long-term care to support the care that they're going to provide by creating that third-party checkbook that's going to pay professional caregivers to handle some of the toughest things involved in being a caregiver. It really is a quality of life issue, but it's not there to replace any caregiving efforts they're going to provide. So how you answer that one is you say, absolutely, your kids are going to take care of you. Your son who lives, he'll absolutely provide care for you, right? And I know that you will care for your mom, right? I just want to talk about a way that you can provide that care longer and better, right? By having, again, that third party checkbook to help you, right? To help you take care of your mom or your parents. That's the way you answer that objection. Then, of course, you have people who say, hey, you know what, my attorney or my next door neighbor, Bill, whatever he says, I do, he's an expert on everything. He said that don't worry about long-term care insurance because Medicaid's going to pay, right? So, you know what? I really don't know. I think I'm gonna trust my attorney or my neighbor Bill, because he said Medicaid will pay and I don't have to worry about anything. So rather than say, well, hey, he's wrong, it's not true, say agree with your client. Say you're right, right? Your attorney is right. Medicaid will pay for your nursing home care, right? But there are strict income and asset limits that that you have to adhere to, you have to qualify for before Medicaid will pay. And that is a fact. I can show those to you. And it's also a fact that Medicaid does not pay for home health care. And it doesn't pay for assisted living either. It will pay for your nursing home care once you qualify. But you know what? You told me, one of your hot buttons, in fact, your biggest hot button was over your dead body, will you go into a nursing home? So, kind of based on that, I want to put together a stay-at-home plan for you. And Medicaid does not pay for a stay-at-home plan. It only pays for nursing home care. So And then, of course, and we're at the end. We're at the end here. The big objection, you know what? The premium is too expensive, right? You know, even if they haven't seen the premium yet, they say, you know what? It's just too expensive. I've heard it probably is going to be too expensive, right? So now at this point, that's when you get into the plan design, and I think it makes a lot of sense to when it comes to plan design that you use a build-a-bear approach, right? That you start low. You do a plan that takes co-insurance into mind, and you almost put them into reverse sticker shock, right? What we're doing here is not trying to put together a plan that is going to pay for 100% of their future nursing home or facility care. What we're doing is putting together a plan. Again, I like to call this stay-at-home plan. And ultimately, what we're doing is making what can often be an unmanageable situation. When I say unmanageable, I mean unmanageable for the family, both from a emotional and health standpoint, and a financial standpoint, and turn it into a manageable situation. That's what we're doing. And if you look to achieve that, you could put together a plan that will make them pleasantly surprised, because it can be affordable. And keep in mind, even if you look at $100 a day policy, $150 a day policy, right? That's $3,000 to $4,500 a month, right? That would go a long way. And again, go back to their own long-term care story, because at the very beginning, what's the very first question you ask them? Do you know anyone who's needed long-term care? And people will talk, and most people will say, oh yes, my parent, my grandparent, we struggled trying to take care of him at home, and ultimately we had to put into a facility because we just couldn't do it. Well, hey, at that time, would $3,000 to $4,500 a month payable that would have been there to help pay for caregivers, would that have made things easier? Most people say, oh my God, it would have changed our life at the time. So that's why with long-term care, a little goes a long way. And that's just a different way from saying, hey, something is better than nothing, but by saying a little goes a long way, and referring back to their own long-term care story, you're going to get them more willing to go forward and get into that plan design discussion. And then at that point, you're talking about, all right, let's find out what your personalized and customized long-term care plan is. And then, and you have plenty of resources for assistance with that. You have Tyler and Bernard at IAD, and of course, you have me, Mike Simenstad, here at National Guardian Life. And again, when people say, hey, the premium's the major issue, no, it's not. The premium is not the problem. The premium is the solution to the problem, right? And that really is true. And it's your job, and of course, our job here to help you design a solution that's affordable and sustainable for them. With that said, I am about done here, and I'd be hoping to, Bernard, if you're there, I am just happy to open it up for any questions you may have, and go right ahead.
Oh, all right, folks. Yeah, like Mike said, you guys have any questions for Michael, type them in the chat box and get the answers.
All right, here we
Okay.
go. All right, what's happening, everyone?
Uh, nope, actually, no questions,
No questions?
Michael.
All right. All right. Well, listen, if you guys need anything, any assistance, and I'm sure Bernard and Tyler, they have this presentation, so keep in mind, if you guys have access to it, they'll send it to you if you want to refer back to it at any time. And you guys have all the support in the world to help you. So with that said, Bernard, I think I'll wish everyone a great weekend,
All right,
and
well,
and happy selling.
Yep. Well, Michael, thank you, my friend. And yeah, like Michael said, this is going to be uploaded to our YouTube page. So you will have access to it. If you have any questions afterwards, give myself a call. You can give Tyler a call. You reach out to Michael. I will be calling everyone a little later this afternoon just to see if you have any questions, because something may have popped up in your head or something like that. So I'll reach out to you, and then as always, yeah, and see what we can do. Go from there. Folks, thank you for this morning for attending this recap from our sales summit. Folks, I'll say this: have a happy Detroit draft weekend, and we'll see you next time we have a webinar. All right, take care, folks.